All right, guys, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Homefront podcast. We're joined today with Jacob and Dave. They're friends of ours, and they are commercial brokers. You're brokers, right?
Agents, realtors.
Agents,
Yeah.
okay.
Client services.
Yeah.
They do a lot of multifamily, so we wanted to have them on. We were actually just chatting before this that there's a lot of investors who are just underwater on a lot of condo, pre-con, and stuff like that, and just trying to help you guys navigate if you are interested in investing that way. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate you having us on. Thank you.
I've recently started being asked a lot of questions regarding the commercial space, and it's cool working beside you guys because I also learn a lot just hearing you guys speak to clients. And I recently, one of your team members was telling me about the ability to bundle up residential homes, like whether they be 2 duplexes and a garden suite, like 5 units total with the lots touching, and commercialize the mortgage, which totally interested me because obviously I'm always looking out for the next investment. So I did want to introduce the whole idea of a commercial mortgage versus a residential mortgage to investors that are looking at how CMHC plays a role in that. And I guess what CMHC is, like people throw that term around, but I find that people don't actually know what it is or how to qualify for it or how to get it on the building, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'll start with it. So CMHC, it's often, people think it's a lender, and it's really just insurance. So what you're going out and doing is going and getting and qualifying for insurance. And what that'll do is just ensure that you as the owner, if you default on your payments, the insurance will kick in. And what that means for you is any lender you're going to go to, if you have that insurance in place, is going to give you better lending terms. They're going to give you better rates. They're going to give you longer amortization and overall just bigger and better mortgages, which will let you get more leverage and it'll let you do things like buy buildings.
So CMHC is, so if you buy a residential home and you put less than 20% down, that's the same thing essentially, where the loan is insured. So
Right.
the lender is able to offer you a better rate because if you default on the mortgage, the lender doesn't have as much risk because the CMHC will pay back the loan.
Which is the taxpayer, right? Am I wrong to say that? CMHC?
Say that again?
Or isn't CMHC insured by the taxpayer?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a government thing.
Okay.
You are correct.
Everyone's like, where does the money come from? I'm like, well,
Yeah. It's a pot of money.
Yeah, it's a pot of money that comes from the
government.
government.
Yeah.
Which comes from debt.
And a great topic of conversation is what Brooke was just mentioning, which is kind of on the cusp of res commercial,
Right.
and getting those residential properties into commercial, or getting a traditionally res buyer into a commercial building to get that mortgage, because it's going to free up a lot of your net worth, right, and your ability to finance.
Right.
We have a lot of clients come to us that say, "Hey, I bought 5, 6, 7." I heard 8 the other day.
Yeah,
I
8
think you said
yesterday.
somebody
Yeah,
said
yeah,
they had
yeah.
8 residential properties. I was like, that's new, because I always thought it was
a lot.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
But and they just get tapped out, right? The banks say, "Hey, we have a limit. We don't want to lend to any more over 5," or I don't know. You guys let me know. But
Yeah.
so we have a lot of those calls, and that's where we can start talking about grouping homes together, condos in the same building.
Oh, condos in the same building works too.
Yeah. So
wow.
we've actually had a case like that where someone had, I think it was like 15 condos in one building,
What? How does that even happen?
and they were able to get it into CMHC. Now, is that the norm? Probably not,
Yeah.
but it was an interesting case.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And just like what's really popular right now is take a single family, go 4 units in the house and do a garden suite or a laneway home or whatever you want to call it. Boom. Now you got 5 units. Well, now you're in CMHC commercial financing territory, and you can actually start getting up to 85, 95%, 50-year AM, like
Right. So then
crazy
your cash
terms.
flow
Right.
is crazy at that point.
And then you're not getting constrained, right? Like it's you go buy 6 houses is the only thing where we have a successful model and the bank slows you down.
Right.
Or in commercial, you're on 3, 4, 5, 6. They're opening the gates. They're trying to give you more lending.
So the ability to qualify for a commercial mortgage is different than the residential qualification process in the sense that it
Easier
goes,
to-
it's easier to qualify for a commercial
Yeah.
mortgage.
Yeah, the way you look at it is like if you're buying a building, you're buying a business, right? So you're buying future predictive cash flows. So if the building makes sense and you're at least a halfway decent borrower, you're almost certainly likely to get it. The only chance you won't is your net worth. So if you're below a threshold of net worth, you might not. But even then, there's ways to mitigate it. Financing is often not a roadblock in commercial where it is in residential, as long as you're buying a good qualified deal.
So it becomes commercial when it's 5 units or more. That's the idea, right? And then if it's like a 4 units, then it's res.
Res, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and even at 5, like you can kind of blend. You can go to, like, I'm sure you guys would agree, you can get some residential financing on 5 in some cases. It might not be worth it, right?
Sometimes it's more beneficial to go residential, sometimes commercial. That's why that 5, 6, I know I think RBC even does 6 units as res.
They do, yeah.
Wow.
Right? So,
And that's where we're working, like, again, a plug for you guys, but we're pitching stuff back and forth all the time in that zone, right? It's like, how do you guys look at it versus how do we look at it, right?
Yeah.
Right, because our traditional investor that's, I guess, new to the investing world, like a lot of like new investors want to buy the duplex, right? Yeah. And then it's simple to run your numbers. This is your mortgage payment, this is your expenses, and this is what the projected rents are for upstairs and downstairs. Does it carry? Does it cash flow?
Right.
And then you can project equity a little bit better than you can project it in a building. So there's 2 parts to that. But we've seen a lot of investors get hurt with running the numbers in 2020's interest rates having gone up, and now they're negative cash flow. Now I'm having conversations a lot with, somebody that potentially has that triplex or fourplex and wanting to pivot to the commercial space, but needing that budget to do the renovation. So would the goal be to, hey, I have a fourplex or a triplex, I want to add 2 more units to commercialize the mortgage, then refinance with CMHC and pull your money back out and amortize it over a longer period so that you're not bumped into a negative cash flow?
I'm going to sound like a politician, but it's really dependent on like what your goals and what you're trying to accomplish, right? We get this all the time as people like, is this a good deal? It's like depending, right? It's very dependent on what you're trying to accomplish.
Dave, it's a yes or no question.
I know, like, just give me an answer here. But it really depends on what your goals are. But that's certainly something you can do is just go and create a structure where you're allowed to go to CMHC and you can strip out more capital. CMHC, especially on the commercial side, they have some pretty rigorous inputs to not really let you stretch loans out of context. So they'll make you put in something for salary, which is grass cutting and snow removal and maintenance and all these line items that they'll see that they have to be input into the deal for you to get the loan. So there's kind of this cushion of safety that's built into a lot of these loans. So you're not seeing as many multifamily owners underwater. It's still happening, but not nearly to the degree that we talked about earlier, which is the condo.
And to Brooke's point, when looking at, let's call it a 5 unit or a 6 unit, and then adding all of those cushions, your value on a commercial mortgage actually might be less than what market value would be considered as a residential house, right? Because we're going to look at our numbers based on cap rates, dollar per door, and running it with the CMHC numbers.
Yes.
Where you're going to look at it direct comparison, I imagine, right? What did 1, 2, 3 somewhere to sell for?
Yeah.
So you really want to. It's nice to have it as a tool in your belt.
Right.
And know when to use it, right?
Yeah.
When to say, hey, if I add another unit, I can go commercial, I can do this, pull some capital out. Yeah. That may work, and we're doing that with people in Toronto right now. But it also may backfire, right? Depending on how your cash flow looks.
It's just getting together. Again, why we work together on a lot of these, right? How you guys look at something. And it's pretty clear when you run the data and layer on both res commercial, which is a better path. Like it's usually pretty simple.
I think our avenue is more like, when we work together, is we're selling a few units off so they can go into commercial.
Right.
Like Brooke and I are on that side. And then you guys are more, I guess ours deals are more emotional and yours are more data driven.
Yeah.
Ours are very
Is that why you pivoted? Because so Jacob was a residential agent when you and I first met. And then for the past 5, 6 years, you've been.
That was a big reason for me personally. Just, I'm a data guy. I like the numbers. I like diving into it. I like doing a pro forma on the weekend. I go to a cafe, I sit down, I run my numbers.
Big nerd.
I'm a huge nerd. But I like that I can pinpoint value very accurately. Yeah. And that's something that Dave and I have been, I'll say it, right? I'm pretty happy that we're I don't want to sound cocky when I'm trying to say this.
I can't wait.
We're usually very close to the sale price, right? Even on properties we see on MLS, and we'll say, hey, this has been on the market for this many days. You know what? It's going to sell for $3 million, and it's listed for, $3.5 million.
Yeah.
And it will 200, 300 days on the market, and then we'll see it drop to $3 million and sell, right? Because we can really pinpoint that value. Where in residential, interlock around the pool.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. What's it at? Yeah. Is that a positive?
And I always felt with res, at least for me, it was kind of like, this is what your neighbor sold for, but we're just going to pick that number. That's what we're going to go to MLS with, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's not that way. Maybe it is, but
No,
with
it
commercial, like I can really
Yeah.
sit down and pick
It's
that
like
number.
it's like res is art in that sense. Like
Yes.
it's a blend of art versus science. Ours is more science. Yours
Yeah.
is art. Like it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
feel.
That's actually really good.
Yeah,
That's
That
a good
is
line.
really
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but it's like I did a video recently about, you know, people going through, it doesn't really happen in our world. They go through a res house and they think like, I like how it makes me feel. It's a nice, and they talk
Right.
about feelings. You know, who cares in our world?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do the numbers tell you? What are you
Yeah.
going to do with it? And do those align with your goals? That's really all you're looking to do.
Yeah, like even when you're selling a res house, I'm like, don't be cooking in it.
Yeah.
Go out, yeah. Like, I don't know, weird smell throws somebody off. Like when
Yeah.
you walk in, you're not thinking, oh, how much is going to cash flow
Right.
Yeah.
per month for me
I
in,
remember when
in
Brooke
30
sold my
years?
house, right? She totally cleaned all my kitchen out.
He texted me and he's like,
And
where
it was
am
on the
I-
market for a little bit. It was kind of in the really rough part, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, hey, we want to cook dinner. It's been a month.
No, you're not cooking
Where's my
dinner.
knives?
I took everything off his counter. So he had his knife set. He had like a
It's
blender or
funny.
something.
And I had no idea where you
I
put
just-
it. And then
And I shoved stuff into drawers. I'm like, nope.
but I think it was funny because I was like, hey, where's my knife? She's like, wait, you still haven't used your knife? I was like, you told me not to cook.
Yeah, he told me not to cook. Yeah, they got
so
they got the
funny.
Ninja whatever
I
on the
have-
counter. I'm like,
yeah.
get rid of that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
going
that's
away.
gotta go.
Yeah, it's gotta go.
No, you guys did a great
Yeah.
job on that.
Yeah,
It looked
that's
good.
amazing. I have a seller right now that they were out, they were working, and I went and I staged the whole place, and they came home and they're like, yeah, it looks beautiful. And they're like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna live at the parents' house. We don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it's also it's helpful.
Yeah,
But-
it is. It's flexibility on showings. It's
Yeah.
make your bed. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. It's just different. It's emotional.
100%. Do you find that investors that I guess aren't so well versed with buying commercial, maybe it's their first one, that wants the pretty building that's already renovated and right? Because there's a bit of like, even for myself, like I can understand if it may be a building that's not renovated and kind of doesn't look so pretty versus a really pretty one and they're the same price, like, oh, I want that one, right?
Right.
But maybe that one's tapped out in terms of it's already at market rent, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. Is there one that is like, this would be a way better plan to do some renovations to increase the rents, to value the building higher? Like, let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
value add with a commercial building versus one that, let's say, you already did it, all the units are renovated, just rented, you can sell it as, hey, it's cash flowing, but it's kind of tapped out at market rent right now. Which would be your preference to go into?
It again, same kind of, it's really on the intake. Like, what are we trying to do? Right. So for some of these newer investors, we try to gravitate them, if it aligns with their goals, more towards a turnkey solution. What we're doing a lot of right now are these, somewhat turnkey with a little bit of lift. And we actually, not to overcomplicate, but we'll negotiate the time for the purchaser to go get CMHC financing on it. So it's going to cash flow positive. They're safe. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to change anything. They're still making money. They're making good money, good cash flow. And then over time, they can start to work to enhance the building. So they're not pressure. It's like
Does it
when
take a lot of time to get CMHC financing? Is that like a time
yeah, it's
thing?
like 4-ish, give or take months, and it ranges kind of 4 to
So
6.
is that a condition?
It depends on the structure, but we've been
Okay.
doing a lot of those.
It's like if you sell something in January as the realtor, you don't really know if you're going to get paid 5-6 months. And
we are closing on a deal. Well, hopefully closing on a deal next week.
Knock on wood.
I brought the buyer. He was a seller actually
Okay.
for 34 units, I think.
Yep.
And it's been 6 months.
Yeah, almost
Okay.
6 months. Yeah.
6
I
months.
can only imagine the feeling when you've had a deal tied up for 6 months
Then
and
it
then
falls
it
through.
doesn't go
Yeah.
through.
Oh,
Well, so how
it hurts.
Yeah,
It hurts.
I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, that stings. Yeah.
There's a couple mechanisms we use to protect both buyer and seller. And first off, I want to say, like, because I'm sure there's people listening to this going, why the heck would anybody want to wait 6 months to sell their property? That's ridiculous, right? And so I do want to address the sell side because that's what I do most of.
Well said. Yeah.
And the allowing a buyer to go to CMHC and giving them the 5, 4, 6 months, whatever it is, we can actually quantify how much more that's going to earn you on your building, like to the dollar, because we can underwrite that mortgage and I can say, listen, this is what the mortgage is, or this is what the client's going to pay to get a bridge to close the building now. It's going to cost $200,000, $300,000.
Yeah.
And the interest rate's through the roof. Or I can say, or we can allow them the 4 months, get a 4% interest rate. Here's what their cash flow is going to look like. And there's actually value built into that. So we can evaluate that mortgage and say, if you allow me to go for 6 months to do my deal, I'm going to get you $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 more than I can get you if you wanted a quick closing.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mr. Seller, that's kind of on you. Which one do you want, right? Like, I can
Yeah.
get you both.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
Interesting.
We're often
that's how
bringing,
we've been using that
Yeah.
to benefit both sides.
yeah, we'll often bring like dual offers. So it's if you
Right.
want us to buy it quickly here, if you want us to go to, or if you give
Oh,
us funds
okay,
to
so you're-
CMHC.
yeah, the
Especially in
risk
today's
premium.
market with where the rates are. You look at commercial bank rates. What are they? They're still about what 5-6%.
Yeah.
Right. Or we can get a 3.75% with a CMHC. So
Wait,
it's that much more cash
changes
flow. It's
it.
that
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
It
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
changes the metrics of the deal.
Interesting.
So when you guys are projecting out multifamily right now, and there's 4.9 million people supposed to leave by next year, immigration is pausing. I mean, Canadians have obviously spoken out about immigration being through the roof. What do you guys see for your rental units? Because we're down 10% in Toronto, we're down 10% in Vancouver. I think it's going to get worse.
Yep.
I think there's just so much on the market, and there's going to be like it's going to be good for tenants. I think because they've been shit on for so long. But
renting has been,
yeah,
has been a struggle.
what do you guys think? Like
Yeah.
going forward, do you
It's-
see
I mean,
rents
look,
staying
like,
flat?
We're chatting about the condos, right? Like condo market's being decimated right now. There's I live in Burlington, like right by my house. There's just a whole influx of inventory, and that's pushing down rental rates. And I know that impacted one of your properties from a rental side. So what you're seeing is like a lot of our transactions are correlated to cap rate, and what you're seeing is kind of cap rates increasing, prices coming down a little bit. But I think a lot of people are just utilizing, when we run numbers, we're not future predicting rents to go up. That's one of the safe havens that we do, at least in our world. It's not saying, hey, you're going to get a 5%, 10%,
yeah.
in some cases 20% lift year over year on your rents. So when you negate that, it starts to make the deal a little bit safer, I think. But yeah, rental rates decreasing are certainly pulling down.
Because that can devalue the building
Correct.
by a large amount. If all, let's say 34 units, like the one you guys just did,
They all
came down
drop by 10.
14%.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's an extreme
millions of
example, I guess. Yeah,
dollars.
but yeah.
And so my plan to kind of counter this is we're working with a lot of buyers right now where I'm saying, hey, don't go high end on your renos.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So there's always going to be a need for rental housing.
Yeah.
But that is low to low middle class housing,
Right.
right? If the market goes where you were saying we start going downhill further than where we are, right? Rental rates come down, housing prices will follow, right?
For
so
sure.
then those, let's call it those high end renters are more than likely going to go buy a house, right? But that low to middle class is still going to be the renter population.
Yeah.
So with a lot of stuff right now, we're saying, hey, let's look at keeping our buildings kind of middle of the road. Let's not go super high end. And those are the buildings that we're finding we have a lot of traction on.
Okay.
It's interesting that like let's say there's two residential homes and one is a kind of mid reno, like kind of well done, not crappy, but not the best reno, versus one that has like an excellent reno. Let's call it, you might make a couple $100 extra in
Right.
rent, maybe if the rental market allows for it. But it's funny how, let's say you have 2 6 units and one of them is much prettier, renovation are much nicer. If they're both vacant, are they technically worth the same if they're on the same street? Like let's call it same metrics on all accounts, all vacant, same height, everything. But the unit
one's just
itself, one's just
renovated better?
pretty inside. Is it one worth more because of projected higher rent?
Yes. Yeah, it would be worth more. You're just because you are looking at like it's fully stabilized value. Like if we tenant those units, we're going to get more, and then you can actually do the math on if we're getting $200 extra a month on 6 units, and then you take that times by 12 divided by the cap rate. It'll give you the value, and we could actually tell the buyer, hey, this is the difference between the two buildings.
I think it's really important what renos you're doing. And that's where we're giving a lot of guidance right now. For example, we take a look at my 2 6-unit buildings, right? And it's a perfect example of this, right? We had one unit and we kind of did this as like an A or B renovation plan. So the one, we knocked out a wall, we did an island, open concept, which is the higher end, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one, we said, no, leave the wall.
Yeah.
We did the same floors, same paint, like it was just a freshen up, nothing crazy. And we ended up getting the same amount of money, and the one cost way more to reno.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
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 So what I want to prioritize over open concept and this and that, it's in-suite laundry,
Yeah.
in-suite air conditioning, because both of those units had that, right? That's what people want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to get a good tenant,
Yeah.
just give them the same things you would want in a unit. I don't care if my
Yeah.
kitchen wall is open or not.
We always say this to the buyers, like
Yeah.
Keep it
you're
simple.
not living there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not you renovating to the specs that make you comfortable. It's what's the least amount of money you can spend to get the most amount of rent. And there's actually like formulas you can do. Like the big, huge guys like Skyline, they actually run statistics on you know, that parquet flooring versus vinyl. And for a long time, if you went in their buildings, it was parquet because it didn't make sense for them to change it. Like that's how granular they get into data.
Wow.
So now you're seeing them do it because for some reason their data changed for them.
Everyone hates parquet. Yeah,
Everyone hates it.
They're like, oh, get rid of it.
It's a cost.
Better than vinyl.
But they actually did the numbers on like what the cost would be and how much more market rent they would capture. And it didn't make sense for them.
What about, so I have 3 separate units that I've furnished only because my mortgages were so high and I'm like, whoa, I need to get more rent here. So I furnished them all. So I get way higher than market rent. Like normally we get 2,500, I get 3,500 just because it's furnished. Yeah. How does that play in, or does it? Like, let's say they actually rent for much more. Does that value the building higher because there's furniture in there, or is that like
it's a great question.
Like
The furnished rental question. That's a
We're live.
case
Were you
here.
smiling? I knew you were smiling at me. Yeah. It's so this happens a lot. Is you go by somebody wants to look at an 8-unit, 10-unit building, and a vast majority of the rentals are Airbnbs. So their income is $4,000 a month, but market rent is $2,200. CMHC, they will not get, well, there's some change, but right now they won't give you financing on what Airbnb data will be. So then you get into furnished rentals, which is a little bit like it's scaled down from Airbnb. So can you get away with it? It's like, how far off?
I think the question is, do you have a 12-month lease? Right? Because
Yeah.
CMHC is not going to go look for furniture and say, oh, well,
they're gonna test it towards the market. So you know, if you're 2,500 and you're getting 3,000, there's a case to be made. If you're putting 4,000 on a 2,000, they're not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
they might-
so the rents that you give to CMHC essentially that the building is currently getting in a lease, let's say, they're going to make sure that those align with market values, let's say in case they leave,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well, they'll have like a tolerance because they're not like they'll take your dollar amount, but like Dave said, they're not. You can't just submit $10,000 for a 2-bedroom.
Right.
They're gonna go, okay, great, thanks.
Right.
They're gonna look at that and go, no, something's off here, right? So they'll investigate why the rent is higher. There is cases though where, if you're getting slightly higher rent, you're getting an extra $200, $300, $400 a month or whatever it is, because you have that much better of a unit and the furniture and everything. To my understanding, is they will consider that, right?
They will.
And it
As
will
long as it's
value the
within
building
reason.
higher.
Yeah.
Interesting. And remember we were talking about the coin laundry too, because it's the income approach when it comes to valuing a commercial building. And so doing things like that as well, because I was talking to somebody that had a commercial building, space on the main floor, restaurant, and then residential units above. So there's another way to also push the value of the building, not just with renting them out to tenants, but also
That's where we
Additional
get, like,
income, yeah.
That's where we nerd out when we walk through, because like storage units are often never utilized, right? Parking, charging for parking. You got to think, if you have a 30-unit building and you're not charging for parking and you start charging $50 a spot, you can do that as long as they're not attached to the lease. That's a huge lift. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars of value
Yeah.
in a building just on charging for parking when you didn't before.
Yeah, even just billboards, right?
Billboards.
Billboards, signage,
Solar.
radio towers, like
Yeah.
solar. Like there's all these companies you can contact. I actually have a guy that does billboards, and like he will hunt for apartment buildings that fit the zoning where he can slap a billboard on the roof, and now that's your income.
and now that's because somebody will pay you.
They're going to rent that billboard off of you. Well, they'll
Brookix
take
is
the
gonna-
profit, they'll pay you. Yeah, and then we'll have Brooke on my building.
From for sale to sold.
But
Okay,
it's
cool.
it's you know, it makes, like, that's the nice thing of multifamily. Like if you buy a single family, you have to get creative. Like you're going to furnish it. When you have a building, there's just these small incremental changes make a huge difference, right? So charging for things like
Right.
coin operated laundry, right? Really making a nice, like,
Yeah.
I've got a building in Kawartha Lakes and we've got a laundromat there. We made it nicer, and now that the community uses it, it's right by the beach and people are using it. And it just, like, you know, we tripled our income on the revenue from the laundry, and the building value
It's worth more now.
Yeah, it's way more.
Yeah,
That's
that's so interesting.
Yeah, and
just
that comes back to like the being able to pinpoint value, right? So when I'm in a building, I say, if I can increase my rent by this much, it will increase my price by this much.
Right.
And there's a
An
direct
actual formula.
for that.
Interesting.
Right.
Where with residential, the part that's always kind of freaked me out is like, I'm a little bit at the whim of the market,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Market comes up and down. The value of the house is going to go up and down no matter what my rent is.
Yeah.
So let's say we see a 8-unit building and it's fully tenanted, but it was rented 10 years ago. Everyone's paying $800, but market rent is $2,200. Is the value of the building based on what it's currently getting, or if you?
Yes.
So then you would show a buyer projected if we can turn over tenants or whatever the case may
And
be.
there'll be a buffer built in because there is spread to market,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's going to be reflected in the cap rate.
Okay.
So a building that is 800 across the board is going to sell for a lower cap than than maybe not like a brand new stabilized building, but then a building that's more stabilized because there is more lift. So essentially, if I want to do the work, I can go make this much more money on the building. So you're going to pay a small premium for that. But yes, in general, it's valued on the current income.
So you got to get them out, basically.
What about
Like you'll have
rent
to pay.
control?
Well,
Let's say
you'd be
it's a
surprised.
brand
Like
new
there's
reno.
ways you can add value, like we talked about. Like that's where everybody's head goes. Like you got to kick the tenants out. It's like you can make great returns on buildings by just making it more efficient.
Okay.
Right. There's a lot of things you can do that doesn't have to be confrontational with tenants to make.
Yeah.
money.
Because the number we're looking at is NOI. It's net operating income, which is income minus expenses.
Right.
Right.
So from anywhere.
So income can be from anywhere and expenses can be reduced from anything
Right.
Yes.
to better that NOI. So leave everybody at 800, call the building affordable, go to CMHC, get 100 points, get your 95% loan to value.
Slap Brooks sign on the top, charge them $10,000 a month, and they would double
Throw
their
some parking
building
in there and some storage lockers and bada boom,
There
you're
we
done,
go.
right? Like this.
Interesting.
That's kind of cool. So CMHC likes this because you're adding more housing or you're,
Yes.
that's because I feel like a lot of landlords right now are scrutinized in res. Like even in Toronto, I think they're passing a bill or they're going to pass a bill of like, if you want to renovate, you got to pay for them to go somewhere and then they come back to your unit or something. I don't know the whole thing, but
What about rent control when it comes to, let's say,
just be with inflation.
Okay, let's call it. Remember, in one of the buildings, units were renovated, but like one was separated into a 2-bedroom or whatever the rule is. Like, let's say somebody added a basement suite. That's technically a new unit that wasn't there before. So my basement wouldn't be under rent control versus if that basement had been there and I didn't create the basement, then it'd be under rent control.
If you received a new occupancy permit for the first time.
Right.
So if you renovate a basement apartment that was already a basement apartment,
Then
doesn't,
no.
But if you made one, then
you
it,
actually have to get a new occupancy permit to allow that to work.
Yeah.
But yes, technically, if you say single family home, you're doing a duplex and you get a new occupancy permit for the basement, permits are closed, everything's good, no rent control.
Yeah, we're doing one where it's 16 res up top and 6 commercial. We're converting the 6 commercial to 8 residential. So it'll be 24 residential units. That bottom section of those 6 res will all be non-rent control because they're new.
Right.
yeah, this is just for Ontario too, right?
Just for Ontario.
Yeah. I don't know the other laws, but CMHC works all over Canada. So you could do this in Alberta if you wanted. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, because I usually like my investments close to home, and I like to be close to them. But I hear you guys thinking, hey, I'm on my way to London. I'm on my way to Windsor. Like, so you're going here, there, and everywhere, and it's for buildings that I guess work better than here.
Yeah.
You were talking about the one building you guys work on in Hamilton, how a couple of the units were changed into a 2-bedroom instead of a large 1-bedroom, and you didn't like that approach. Was it because of how the renovation was done? Or because I see the idea if somebody's going to renovate it, well, if you create a 2nd bedroom, you're going to likely get more. And even if you run it at market rents, a 2-bedroom will be in a different category. So I see the idea, but you didn't like it.
It just comes down to like how rentable is it? Like you see people just, that was a unique circumstance because I think you were able to rent them at peak market rents. But sometimes people go overboard and they're just jamming as many bedrooms in. It becomes non-usable space, and you're just not really getting the right tenant pool in there. So another extreme example, there's a multifamily right now. It's 70 plus units, and I think 75 of them are bachelor. They're studios.
Okay.
It's not selling because the tenant pool you're going to have as a building owner of 70 plus units, and most of them are bachelors. You're not going to have, it's hard to maintain a good environment in a building like that. So it's kind of the same thing. If you're just jamming in a bunch of bedrooms in there, you're not necessarily getting, if you do too much of it, you're not getting the right tenant profile as a building owner.
And that's what I was going to say was tenant profile.
Yeah.
Right. Rentability, you can probably rent anything, right?
Yeah.
But tenant profile is key because do you want to have a headache?
Yeah.
Right? Now it's,
Really? Yeah.
there's return on investment. There's also return on headache.
Yeah.
Right? Like how much,
Yeah.
right? If you have a building with all bachelors and you have less desirable tenants in there, that's going to be, now it's actually going to cost you more to manage.
Right.
And that'll impact the
be
value.
dealing with non-payment of rent and all these things. And then, then your value is going to go down. So it's a part of it is like investment fundamentals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? You just want good assets, right? You want a building that is a good mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms with a few bachelors. Perfect. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you jam, if everything's kind of makeshift 2 beds, like you're going to have more issues with that.
You got to think like the people buying, like the buyer profile for these are usually long term. It's usually sophisticated money. So when they look at it, they're looking at all aspects, and it's like is that going to be a headache for me or my team? And, you know, too many bachelors or jamming too many bedrooms in, it can. So it hurts value.
And when you guys are working on, like you just said, 70 units and you're selling the whole building, is it just not an ability? And I have no idea when it comes to, like, you see these high rise and they're individual sales. Could you not be like, I'm going to sell 5, I'm going to keep the rest of the building?
So those ones, no, it's like, it's classified as a multifamily unit with like 70 or however many. If you buy a 6 unit, we'll go to that, probably make it easier. You can't just start selling off those unless they're individually titled and condoed. And most of the time they're not. So you can't just turn around and sell those.
Which is a play in its own to actually buy multifam, convert it to condos and sell them off.
Yeah.
Now it's not that easy. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
There's
right
people
now,
that's what they do.
there's people doing it. Right now, in the big population centers, it's challenging because of the low vacancy rate. Right, the city's going to want to see rental housing. They're not going to want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
So unless we can unless our vacancy rate can increase, which
Yeah.
it may start to.
Yeah,
do
which
it
ties into your
with
earlier
the-
point.
with the
Absolutely.
immigration comment, right? So maybe that's the new play, right? Maybe we start looking at condo converting some of our buildings.
Yeah.
Again, that's the excitement of multi is there's always exits, there's always strategies, right? But you're usually seeing those condos, the condoization of townhomes, right? So everything's metered, the water, the hydro, so they're their own little subunits, and we see that happen more than, you know, a 70 unit condo building or town
Right.
building.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah.
So multi-residential is still doing well. Like you guys seem like you're swamped like lately,
There's a
which
lot.
is
Yeah.
I feel like it's picking up in the recent.
It's
is
just, you know what? Again, it's a different, buyer pool than what you guys would be dealing with.
Who would be the buyer pool for this? Like if you were to listing this, yeah.
Yeah.
Like is it someone who owns the 2 units and now they want to upsize, or?
No, but well, we range, right? Most of our clients are multi-building owner looking to acquire another one, or the new subset is a lot of people that own 5, 6 singles and duplexes, and they want to buy into the multis.
because they would have more cash flow or because they get the mortgage off of their personal qualification?
Yeah, I think it's both. Like it lets you scale more. I think again, you hit roadblocks when you hit 4 or 5 singles and duplexes. They start, you know, trying to stop you, and then you get into multis, and you can, you know, sky's the limit. Right? It's just about finding the good deal and having the capital. So they're out there, I think. And what's happening in our world, anyways, a lot of those people were on the sidelines when things were crazy. Right? They didn't like our investor pool. It doesn't really have the fear of missing out. It's more just data driven. And now that the metrics are attractive again, people are coming forward and they're buying. And they're long term. They're 10, 15, 20 years.
I wish res people had the same thing.
I
And yeah.
So you guys are more temperamental, right?
Yeah.
They
They go, you were right. I should have waited till the summer. It was quieter. And I'm like, you wanted to get in so bad. I told you.
We're like opposite sides, because when things were crazy, a
Right.
lot of our clients were going, we're not involving ourselves in this. They stepped away, and then now they're ready to deploy capital again.
Cool.
Yeah, it's one of our first questions I think we ask when we intake a new client is, you know, why are you buying a building? Or what's the goal?
Yeah, the
right?
goal.
And more times, like I've actually told a few people, no, you should be buying duplex, triplex. Like multifam actually isn't the right buy for you because they're looking for quick cash or a flip. They're like, I want to buy something.
Yeah. You don't flip
What's the value? You want to sell it in 2-3 years max. And it's like, we're minimum 5 to 10 years on a multifam.
I think it should be
that's
minimum,
that's
even on a
so-
duplex. I think
I
people
agree
need,
with
there's
you.
no, and I know there was quick money recently, but
How many
it's
people
too
got burned
risky.
doing that though, right? Like,
And
I'm
that's where I was
going
going.
to enter this, exit this in 6 months, and it's like, wait,
man.
you know,
There's people doing like duplex conversions and flips on bungalows and flips on houses, and I think they were doing okay.
Yeah.
I never really worked with much of them, but
Yeah.
from what I've seen, that looked like a viable model.
Yeah.
The challenge with the buildings is because it's so directly related to the interest rate, the cap rate, and all of that there's so many people caught out now because they were doing that and they got away with 1, 2, and all of a sudden they went into their 3rd and 4th, and now they're like, crap.
Yeah.
They
The
bought
market,
it for more than they can even refinance.
can-
the market went against them. And then, you know, Cortez,
That can
how do we
happen in
get
any
there?
business.
Yeah. Or even a stock, whatever, it doesn't matter. But, you know, how do we get to 800? I don't know, go outside and look for God and pray. It's just not happening tomorrow. Yeah. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Like have that long-term hold because quick money is risky.
yeah, we see less speculators, I think, in our world than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody's looking, let's say on the low end, like you said, 5 years. Well, let's say they buy it today and they have X amount of cash flow, but their plan is to sell it in 5 years. If the rents stay the exact same, the tenants will stay for the next 5 years. Wouldn't the building be worth what you paid? If it's directly attached to the income approach rather than the market conditions.
Oh, if rents haven't gone up?
If rents stayed the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So it would be the same as like if real estate in general stayed flat, right? Like your duplex doesn't move for the same reason, then you just go back to the other metrics, which is mortgage pay down. Your
Right.
appreciation is not going to be as high. So yeah, in theory, yeah.
Right. But then with residential, sorry to interrupt, you can do things to push value to make that money a little bit better, it seems like, than commercial. Whereas, you know, I can go and add something to my house or redo the kitchen and then make a return on my money that way if the market, like if I don't have any passive appreciation at all.
Ours is the same though, right? That's where we get charging for park. Like if we can increase
Right.
our income and decrease our expenses. So you go buy a 6-unit building, almost all of them are incredibly inefficient.
Okay.
So the utilities are just horrible. So you start doing things like you change the windows and all of a sudden your expenses to heat the building just went down. So it's the same metrics. It's just instead of it being on 1 unit, it's on 6. Right. So we have all these avenues. You can charge for parking on a single or a duplex, right? Potentially. And, you know, however you do that, we do that. It's just times 6. So even if rents stay the same on that data point alone, we'd be at the same point.
Right.
But presumably there's all these other ways you're going to add value to the building.
Interesting.
And then you have the mortgage pay down on
Right.
6.
So then you're spread, then it
And
works.
there's market factors, right? Again, like even if you didn't touch a single rent, but the cap rate's compressed, right? Your building's going to be worth more.
Yeah.
There is market factors to keep in mind. It's just the easiest route to increase value is obviously increase revenue.
Yeah.
What happens if you default on your mortgage in commercial? Because in res, people think that I can just walk away, give the keys back, but that's not the case. You can get sued for the difference. Is that the same in commercial?
Yeah.
It's the same. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Sued
there's
for the difference by the mortgage company?
like what you sold it for.
Yeah. You're still in the hook.
Yeah. Yeah. You're still on the
Most
hook.
people buy
Yeah.
commercial in a corp, right?
Yeah.
So,
They can
so a lot of
bankrupt
people
the
say,
corp.
well, I'm protected. I'm in a
Yeah.
corp, right?
Except all those slap
Yeah.
personal guarantees.
I'll just
all over it.
bankrupt the corp and walk away.
There's
go
no
and
risk.
sail
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
I personally have not seen a mortgage without a personal guarantee and
Yeah.
a very hefty personal guarantee.
Yeah. Okay.
So even if the corp goes, they're gonna.
It's interesting. There are some cases of CMHC you can get non-recourse loans, which means like for exactly what you're talking about, something goes awry and you just give the keys away and you're done. But the only way to get there is the building it's such a level that you honestly really gotta try to bury yourself. Right? So it's like it's not gonna happen.
Who's selling these older buildings? Is it just guys cashing out? Is that kind of like because you say the demographic, you're doing more of the sell side.
Yep.
Is it more just guys that just had this for 30 years, time to pack it in? I don't want to do the windows.
There's a lot of private ownership. Like that's the, they've had it or they were, it's the kids of that guy, right? Now the kids have it and they go, well, I don't want to own this thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I have no interest in it. Give me my cash. I'll get out of here.
How do I be
There's
that
a lot
kid?
of
Yeah.
that, right? The younger generations, there's a lot of the older people saying, hey, I'm ready to cash out. And then there's just a lot of people trading up as well, right? Like a lot of our sales are just from people that I bought 5 years ago. And they're saying, great, I bought that 10 unit. Let's sell the 10 unit and go buy a 50 unit.
Oh, okay.
Or
You see a
Interesting.
ton of that, really. And the idea is like even from the singles to the, the large stuff, the higher you go, the more efficient it is on a dollar, right? You have one mechanical system, let's say heating everything, your price per units are done. You're scaling. So the big guys try to get as much into one building as possible. Right. So they won't go buy, 520 units spread around. They want a big giant building.
Okay.
So even someone that owns a 10 unit, if they can go to a 40 unit, it's going to be better on a dollar basis, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Interesting, because you would think, and I feel like most people would think, if somebody owns a 40-unit building, they have to have been extremely rich to qualify for a loan of that size. But that's not necessarily the case,
no.
which is crazy interesting to me. Like
It's
you
what
could
happens.
have a normal kind of job. Of course, you need the money to actually put down, like that's a lot in and of itself. But you can technically have just a normal.
We see behind the curtain, like when we, I'm sure it's the same for you when you start and you're like, oh, like that person owns that. Like,
Oh, wow,
it's just
really?
like, wow, if you thought it would be like Donald
Yeah.
Trump, right? And it's like,
Right,
it's
you
not.
assume,
And it's,
yeah.
and that's what makes it cool. It's just like, if you're a good operator, you see these, exactly what you're talking about. Somebody owns they bought a duplex and they moved up. Now they have a 6 and they go to a 10 and all of a sudden it's like a 50 and maybe they have 2 50s. You're going, that's insane if you really think about it.
Yeah,
But
it's
they're not like, crazy abnormal outlier people. They've just got into it. They're disciplined, and then they start moving up. It's a really cool. It's actually probably one of the most exciting things of the job, I think.
Yeah.
And there is a couple factors. I don't want to pop bubbles, but there's a couple factors that the bank will look at, right? So obviously it is based on the building, but you do need a certain level of net worth, right, for the loan.
And what is that? Is it
Rule of
dependent on
thumb
how
is
many?
what? It's usually 30%,
25.
25 to 30% of the loan amount.
So what are they looking at? The stocks you own, the house you own, just car.
Personal net worth statement.
Okay.
What do you got?
Yeah. What do you got? Okay.
Interesting.
And so, but again, if you're looking at a $1.5-2 million building and you need 20% of the loan in net worth, the loan's going to be what? 1.6, right? So 20% of 1.6,
yeah.
right? That's people have that in their house.
Yeah.
Well, you think too,
That's-
like if somebody buys the 10 unit and they've owned it for 5 years, like that 10 unit value can be included into what we're looking
Into the
for
next
to the
deal.
50, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's sort of an exponential scaling game when they get into it.
Okay.
It is honestly a really powerful tool. It's leverage, but it's a beautiful thing if
So
done right.
They'll look at that. And then the only other thing I would say is just experience. So CMHC actually does look at experience of operation.
I was going to say, yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't want people to think they're going to get up out of bed tomorrow and
Time
go buy
to
a
buy
70,
100
go buy a
unit.
70 unit building.
Your guy's phone is ringing off the hook.
The hype man behind
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Fair play.
And hey, if you have it, everything set up, let's go, right?
Yeah.
Let's wake up tomorrow, go buy a 70 unit building. But they do want to see property management experience or history of managing tenants or anything like that. Now, we can skirt that by saying we're hiring a property management company,
Right.
right? So you want to buy your 70 unit building, Brooke, you have the net worth, but you don't have the management experience. Great. We're going to hire Dave Property Management over here.
Yeah.
And then that kind of takes care of that portion.
Interesting.
Now we just need to solve for the net worth part of it,
Right.
which may be a strategic partner. Maybe it's, there's many ways to work that as well.
So when you're looking at what's on like the market, for example, like when you sent me some, there was one that quote unquote had CMHC on it, and let's say one very similar doesn't have CMHC on it. That affects your down payment essentially because you can assume that CMHC loan of 95%. So you'd be putting 5% down essentially on a building.
We're selling 12 townhomes right now. It's $4.5 million, and you need $430,000 to buy it, and a cash flow.
And
deposit.
so you have 400,000 saved in the bank, whatever.
So what, 10%? Is that right? You need 10% down? Okay.
And that includes
quick
that's really good. But that includes closing costs, legals, everything. Like that's your all in
legitimate like cash
All
in
in.
the account.
And now
to
you have
close on
12
this property.
You have
townhouses.
12 cash flowing townhomes.
And are they rented?
They
Yeah.
All of them. So the cash flow
fully,
is from.
fully rented.
Okay.
And those are all separately metered. So going back to the condo thing,
Right.
that's actually something we looked at. We're like, hey,
Can we
someone
supplement-
could buy and exit in 5 years with a condo play.
Yeah. But so that the reason the down payment is so low on that, it has CMHC debt on it right now.
Yeah.
And so you're just taking over that debt.
Yeah.
And you're now on the building.
And they're all like family townhomes, like families live in them. That's a great play. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so-
I love
Really
that.
neat.
Yeah,
So
better than
it's-
bachelor pads. I'm a big fan of getting stuff for families because our birth rate is just taking a hit. So, anyways, that's a
So
side
if
note.
somebody wanted to buy, then they have 400 grand or whatever. So if it has cash flow, like somebody could technically pull the equity from their house if there's enough cash flow to also account for that debt.
Yes.
And then let's say great plan. What's my exit strategy in 5-10 years? Like, how is it going to be worth more when I sell it? Like I buy it for 4.5.
Yeah.
So it's,
Where do I make money?
if you want to,
Yeah. So this particular deal, so there's 2 of the units are still well below market. They're like $600-700, and the rest are at like $2,200. And then you have, even just if you leave it, you've got your mortgage pay down, right? So you're already doing better.
Because there's so many tenants to pay down the mortgage.
A lot, yeah. And then there's this particular deal, there's the ability likely to add a whole nother townhome unit to build to it. So again, there's all these strategies. In terms of the stuff we talked about, like adding parking and stuff, this building's somewhat efficiently done already. So you're not going to be able to do that. It's really just the other 2 tenants over time, perhaps adding the other one. And then you just have very low cost to borrow on it. So you're going to have that mortgage pay down, which is pretty substantial.
And how long is it that current loan amortized over?
50-year amortization.
Okay, so that's another thing that CMHC allows you to do.
We'll be dead, boys. And Brooke. And Brooke.
I heard, off topic, I heard somebody say that in the next 5 years, AI is going to go so crazy that there's somebody living on today that will live to 500.
500?
Yeah.
I don't want to live that long.
I see where that goes. Yeah.
50 or AM.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's, we want
Yeah, now I want it. Yeah.
But
Anyway.
yeah, that's a great one. Again, just going back to the numbers, because I actually have them in my head right now. It's like, so if you were to put your 400 down, you'd have 8% cash on cash return.
Nice.
So that means you're making 8% on your 400
Per year.
per year to start.
Without doing anything.
So that's like equivalent to some like mortgages, like mortgage
Right.
lending, like private lending, things like that.
Right.
So that's your cash on cash. Then you have your principal pay down and your appreciation with, I think we assumed like a 1.8% rental increase every year. Because I'm sure that fluctuates from 2.5 to 2 to, so
Right.
we actually brought that down. And so with all 3 of those, it's a 27% ROI per year in year 1. And that will obviously escalate as you have principal pay down and whatnot. And your cash on cash return over the 5-year span is going to go from 8%. I think it goes all the way up to like 12% or 13% cash on
As
cash.
it goes
return
down.
if you
Interesting.
don't touch that mortgage over the next 5 years.
Interesting.
So,
Right.
again, this is a good property for somebody that's like, hey, I got that 400. I was thinking about like a mortgage investment or something. You can be like, no, like I'll get you property management. It's fully turnkey.
Property management is
Put your money
included
here.
in the
You don't have to go if you don't want to, but
right.
we're going to earn you that 8% you would have plus the extra growth.
Interesting. And what about repairs? Because obviously 12 townhouses. Let's say what happens when all the roofs need done, all the whatever needs done. How is that projected?
All of those numbers so again, CMHC has these line items you have to include. So vacancy is one, which we talked about. Repairs and maintenance is another. So even though they're fully renovated townhomes, you're not going to incur a lot of that cost up front. We're still accounting for it in the cash flow, and then you're just going to save it, put it away.
So it's actually more cash flow, but technically some of that you're just like,
Exactly.
Yeah, no, if you
Rainy
don't
day
want to
fund.
include any of those numbers, it's like 15%.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
we've got a lot of people that do their own property management, right? But when we're talking numbers, we're assuming that you're going to use property management.
Better that way, yeah.
Because again, CMHC
Actual
has a line item.
functionality of that is like have 2 or 3 separate accounts under that corp and literally have a count that you're putting that
right.
$830 a unit per year into,
Yeah.
so you don't touch it.
So when
And
something
now that's when your
happens,
roof goes, it's like, great, I have
that
10, 20
chilling.
grand in this
Yeah.
account, we're good.
Yeah.
and it
Right?
doesn't affect your cash flow because you've already
Exactly.
built that
Have your
in.
cash
Yeah,
flow
and then you
account.
still have your actual cash flow coming from
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And that's what the big operators do. They have that sort of runway. They build it up to a certain amount. That's set aside, and then you're good.
I like that.
Yeah.
I feel, and like, especially with even joint ventures too, like to pull 200K per person
Yeah,
doesn't seem
you see a lot of it, right?
crazy.
Start selling your Hamilton
just
properties.
I think a lot of people just don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
Like that assumable debt, and there's just creative stuff, right? It's a little bit of a niche pocket that we live in, but there's for the right, goals that are aligned to it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I'll address the one thing because we get it all the time on our podcast and other things. Is people always say, well, there's no good deals out there.
Oh yeah.
Right? There's no good deals. I hear it all the time. And I'm like, well, where are you looking? I go, well, we go on MLS.
And
Like
nothing's
if you go on MLS right now, I think there's like 5 multifamily buildings for sale in the GTA.
So what, everything is like pocket
Everything is
listings?
off market.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Hey, if you got
80% of our business, probably, maybe
off
not more. Yeah, a lot.
So it's just
Isn't it
people in the
harder?
network that send stuff around.
It's a good, okay, here's the theory, at least I think. Like, if you throw it on MLS, we don't know who we're working with. The challenge with what we're selling is it can be under contract for 4 months. We talked about that. So all of a sudden something happens, a deal doesn't close, and then we go do it one more time. That's almost a year. That deal is dead. So we don't really have too many bullets to fire. It's usually one.
You got one shot and you're done. Like if it doesn't land,
Who
then
we
it's-
work with is critical. So a lot of times, like our competition, Jake and I were each other's main competition before we became partners.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's an interesting world because it's like, if I don't have a buyer for this deal, I'm going to go to people who I know execute. So I phone Jacob, I phone my other quote unquote competition, and they do the same for me because my clients will execute on stuff and so will theirs. As opposed to some agent I don't know and they bring me a deal and it's like, is this going to close? Like, it's great you're giving me my number, but if we
Do you
miss,
think
I'm in
it's
trouble.
worth putting up on MLS anyways? Because I know you guys like don't really.
So the other,
You go,
yeah, I was just gonna say the other reason a lot we don't like putting stuff on MLS again is if for whatever reason that deal doesn't come together, and they don't want to sell now, it's a double-edged sword, MLS, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's great because you have max exposure,
Yeah.
but it's bad because you have max exposure.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
And so now the appraisers, the bank, everybody can see the value that your building didn't sell for.
yeah.
And now you're gonna be hard pressed to get an appraisal at a value higher than your
Than what it
MLS
didn't
number
sell
that
for.
didn't sell.
Mm.
So that's a big reason. At least a lot
Yeah.
of my sellers are like, hey, like we want to just put it out there, bring it to your kind of 3-4 top guys.
Yeah.
If we can get it done, great. But we can't go to MLS because I might refi in a year if it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be.
And the bank
And-
will.
Interesting.
Stuck
Look, I
on
mean,
that
the
number.
reality is if we're pricing something right, it's going to sell off market. Like if we go and throw something out off market, we've done the data or a competition and it's priced properly, it's going to go. If it doesn't, going to MLS isn't going to solve your problem. The problem is the list price is probably wrong or there's something inherently wrong with the deal. We structured something incorrectly. Because the buyer pool and the network pool inside of multifamily is, we pretty much get every avenue with our competition and ourselves. So MLS doesn't usually drive much more.
So it seems like it's harder to be a commercial broker.
Barrier
commercial
entry, I
agent,
think, is hard.
because
That's
by
really fun,
exposure
Yeah.
alone, realtors can get deals done just by
But
Yeah, but there's more of us, less of you.
Yeah.
And
But imagine
yours is
everybody that's
numbers.
in your contact list,
Yeah.
right? Like if there was only off market, if on market wasn't an
True.
option, everybody would just be texting each other saying, "Hey,
Yeah, they're doing-
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
You wouldn't sell shit though, honestly. You would like I could text every realtor in my contact list and I don't think I could
You'd
sell
get
stuff.
anything
It's
going.
it's just
We have a WhatsApp group of us and our immediate competition, and we do a boatload of deals.
yeah.
And
That's
then
cool.
we all play nice in the sandbox.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
When it's time to negotiate, it's a whole different side of things. But
Right.
you know, you
Does
can't
that
tell
make
it to
them your competition? Because if you have your clients, it's not like that realtor. So let's say there's people wanting residential. Whoever's going in for the listing appointment is my competition, but it seems like your client's already your client. So
Are they even on like a listing agreement, or are they just like, hey, Jake, sell this for me?
They're your
No, so that's
client.
one thing we actually check.
Oh,
So
okay.
if
Yeah.
I get realtors, I'll be like, send me your listing
Yeah,
agreement.
yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
will bring you a buyer, but I need to make sure you have the listing.
That happens.
And then what if someone reaches out to you guys? You say, okay, you have to sign a listing agreement before I text all my people.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mandatory. Like we will not, because there's so much energy and time
Yeah.
put into this. There's, again, we're going on
You need some sort of
6 month
guarantee.
time period before you start and finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be one buyer that doesn't close. So anyway, we
Yeah.
just need to make sure that everything's written out. We
Yeah.
know who we're representing. We know, what everything is. Are we paying commission? Are we not paying commission? Right.
Right.
Super important for us. And I think all of our sellers and buyers understand that. Like
Yeah.
we've never really had a challenge with people saying, no, I don't want to sign a buyer rep.
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
That's good. You got anything else?
Interesting. No, that was packed with. That was excellent.
Yeah, it was
it's
good.
crazy how different our worlds
Yeah.
can be.
Yeah, they are.
It's about
Yeah.
real estate, but yeah, and even just to add on to the multifamily, like there's other sectors. Like it's a whole nother
Right.
world.
Yeah.
That
When we're talking about, like multifamily.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
World
there's
of
tons. Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Development, there's industrial, and that's the thing about commercials. When someone says, "Oh, I'm commercial," what do? I do everything. That's a red flag for me.
Right.
So I'm like, well, you can't. Like,
Yeah.
There's so many nuances.
have to specialize.
in each specific
Yeah.
asset
Yeah.
class. It's challenging to do everything. Like
I
I
talk to
pretend-
industrial guys, and it's just like it's completely different business.
How thick is the concrete slab where the pounding hammer is going to go?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
these are the
That's
things
fair.
that they actually
Yeah,
will
yeah.
drill and test the floor
Yeah.
to make sure that it's going to hold the weight of the tractor that's coming in or something.
Yeah.
And it's
It
like,
is-
that is so beyond me.
it is such a different job than
Yeah.
what we do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. That's why I don't dabble.
It-
That's why I don't
you know
dabble
what
in it.
I-
Yeah. Like
I-
when commercial guys buy their own house, I'm like, I don't know why you do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
No.
like I just like,
Never.
yeah. But I know some commercial guys that do. And I'm just like, I don't know why you bought this house. Like I would have told you not to buy it. But anyways,
But, you know,
there's no
it's
respect sometimes.
getting value, right? Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare try to, and then what I'm doing is I'm going to compete against you guys in your market. Like, I'm going to get destroyed.
It's so much
Right?
like it's so different.
I'd much
Like,
rather pay
Yeah.
the commission.
Right.
And
to go
likewise,
get a good
yeah,
deal.
Yes,
likewise, yeah.
100%.
Like show me the multifamily, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
just like I'm happy you get the
You know what
whatever
I do
check it is.
see with them is they are on a schedule.
Yeah, we don't do
Nah,
Crazy
no.
is that?
Like not
They're on a
working,
schedule.
not working on
Weekends.
Lord's Day would
They
be
don't
great.
work on weekends.
on the Lord's Day.
On the Lord's Day.
We don't.
No,
We'll go in every once in a while on a Saturday to.
And then we like praise ourselves. Like, look at us.
We're
Yeah.
working,
They're
yeah.
working, yeah,
We
they
are
think working
killing
on a
it.
Then I take
Saturday
2
is
days
like-
off because I worked on a Saturday.
Yeah,
I need a
But
vacation.
you know what? We're super. It's like regimented. It's like 8 to 5. Like boom.
That's
we're in
cool.
Monday to
Yeah,
Friday.
they
Yeah,
thought
that's cool.
working on a Saturday was like, and I was like, do you know? I don't think I've ever not worked on a Saturday.
I know.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, like I'll call you on like a Tuesday afternoon, and
Yeah.
you're doing.
She's in an ice
you're
bath
doing
sauna.
nails
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I don't say that in a bad way. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh,
You have the flexibility.
Right.
Sunday.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's
it's
right.
just completely. We're
Yeah.
like, we are. If I'm not on the road, I'm in the office.
Yeah.
Same with Dave. Like
Same.
there's.
Yeah.
We're never out doing stuff during the week.
Yeah,
It's an
fair.
it's,
Right.
it's an eight
Right.
to it's an 8 to 9 for us.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
feel like a bit naughty when we're doing something like on a Tuesday at 2.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I got to get to work.
Yeah, I got stuff
Yeah,
to do.
that's so funny. Like you're taking work off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find it? Like, how do you keep yourself busy if, like, say, nothing is active going on? Like, you go to the office. What does a day look like? I know you guys
I
are all
don't-
the time, but like, if nothing's going
I
on in
don't.
my world,
I actually
of
don't
deals,
know. Like, we're very busy. Yeah.
That
I'm trying to
doesn't
think like.
happen. That doesn't
No, I was like,
happen.
it's gonna sound like a pretentious
time off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's just always stuff to do, right? Like I'm sure you guys are the same. Like if you're connecting with old clients, see how things are going, right? There's always stuff abuzz. There's always something going
Yeah.
on.
If there's like I'll look at my calendar and I have a time blocked calendar, right? So I kind of have my pockets of what I do. And if I'm ever at a point where I'm like, okay, I've done this, I've done that, I don't have another meeting till 3. What do I do? Like I'll instantly just pick up my phone and be like, man, who haven't I talked to in a little while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just reach out to those contacts and I'll
That's
just
still,
chit
like,
chat.
Yeah.
Good.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's,
Yeah.
and that's the part that I love about this job is I love calling people and just talking about whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair.
And then right before you hang up, you're like, oh, by the way, I got a building for you.
Yeah.
30-minute, 40-minute
so
conversation was
funny.
about their dog or
Yeah.
that they bought. Or
I'm
that's
sure you
funny.
guys get this too, though. You're talking to somebody and they're like, "I want to sell this property," and as they're talking, you're like, "I know exactly who this product is for."
Yeah.
Like that's like the most fun part.
Yeah. No,
Plugging those.
I hear you. Yeah. If nothing active is going on,
And then they decide they don't like it because the paint color or something.
yeah.
I couldn't stomach it. I'm not built for that.
Oh, I had a rough week last week, so I don't
you
even
tell
want
your
to.
story?
No, I don't want to tell you, just in case they're listening.
Anyways, yeah, there's some crazy ones. That come
Yeah,
up.
they just convince themselves to walk away when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's usually the parents. The parents get involved.
The dad
yeah.
at the
Oh, the dad
inspection.
home inspection.
Do you know I
It's
bought
a
this?
real
Did you
thing.
know I bought a house for 80 grand? In
Yeah,
19
yeah.
Awesome.
That's great, man. Thanks.
Oh my god. it's
We
so
can
fun.
get that sometimes though.
We
We're
do get emotional
long-standing
buyers.
building owners, and they're trying to sell. And like a big thing we do is get an environmental, or make sure that there's no issues with the soil. And so sellers all the time, old guys, are like, "I didn't have to do that." And you're like, "Sir, you bought this for $80,000. You didn't have to do anything."
Yeah.
I didn't have to do an environmental.
Yeah. How much money are you going to make on this deal?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now? I mean, I kind of respect it, but what's your guys' podcast? We'll plug that. Real Estate Hot Seat? Yeah.
REI Hot Seat.
Okay.
So it's you can get it anywhere, but it's a YouTube series, right? So if you can get the video, because we do show
The
performers live.
Cool.
Right. So we run through deals and we'll actually bring it up and we'll say, this is the income line. This is the expense line. And we'll walk through everything. And if you watch it, everything that Dave and I talked about today with the CMHC underwriting and all the terminology we used, that's explained very well on the podcast. So
Yeah.
Very good.
anybody who's curious about more, go check that out.
Yeah, definitely check
Company
that
name's
out.
The Investment Group.
The investment group. So if you want to work with them, you'll kick us a referral. So I don't have to. I don't have to go. I don't have to work on Sunday anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
Disclosure's been made.
Yeah.
So now it's just
Oh man, that's hilarious. But yeah, guys, check out their podcast if you want to learn more, especially.
I genuinely like hearing like
Yeah, it
they
was
just-
cool. It's
they
interesting.
do like deal of the day or something that it's like, oh, that's interesting. Even hearing about the townhouses, it's very interesting, and it just kind of opens up your world, especially if you've only ever thought about investment in real estate being your typical house, and thinking that only somebody that makes $1 million a year can afford these
Right.
high rise or low rise buildings. So it is.
It opens up a
interesting.
door.
So
Yeah.
definitely check out their podcast. I think
We'll tag it. Yeah, I'll tag it in the description too. Yeah.
Appreciate you having us on, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
so much.
Yeah, we appreciate it. All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to book a call with me and Brooke for residential stuff, you can click the first link down below in the description. You'll have an absolutely free call just over Zoom with us. And yeah, I'll link their podcast down below, and you guys can reach out to them too if you're looking to scale up. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.